And we are back on planet, my friend. The snow is falling down. It is Fixmas, but that is not the subject of today's episode on this Satisfactory 1.0 guided playthrough. Welcome to the Green Hand. What we're doing is we're heading on over to our fuel factory, the place that is generating all the energy for us right now, because I need to show you how it works. I unfortunately lost a little bit of footage, and that's just inexcusable here on the Green Hand. So I'm going to go show you how I've built out some of these mid-game factories so that you can get a sense for how I'm scaling through the middle half of the playthrough of this game. And I realize there's no such thing as a middle half. There's either the first half or the second half. Now, there will be some extra stuff built out here that I have yet to show you, but let's bring it back to the basics and show you how fuel is set up. Okay, so when you unlock fuel, you're going to unlock a couple different things. You'll get the refineries, which are these right here. I have 6 of them. And you'll also get the oil extractors. Think of oil extractors really as just miners for oil. It's the way that oil gets out of the ground. So what I've done here is I have a pure node of oil. This is what the oil will look like. So this is a normal node, and this is a pure node. So a pure node of oil is going to give you 240 per minute. Let's just do that real quick. I'm running mine at 300 though, and I'll show you why. So once you get oil, it gets to be a little bit overwhelming. First of all, you're dealing with yet another liquid. The last time we dealt with liquid was when we were dealing with water in our coal facility. But now we're dealing with oil. And you've got this machine called a refinery that has all sorts of recipes in it. It's honestly quite overwhelming, even at the beginning, and it only gets more complex from there. So let's pop open our refinery right here. We're hanging out on top. And look at all the things that you can make. Now ignore these alternate recipes and even this one. You'll still have 5 base recipes for oil products, 3 base recipes for fuel, and the one that you want to look at here is just the fuel recipe. So if we pop that open, this is what's already happening. We are taking in 60 crude oil, and we're going to get 40 fuel out of it, but we're also getting this byproduct, which is polymer resin. So we're basically taking oil out of here, throwing it into the refineries, getting fuel and a byproduct. Now, I actually have calculated this slightly under my total output because I only have 300 oil flowing through these pipes because that's the max these pipes can hold. We don't have the upgraded pipes yet, but I built 6 refineries. 6 times 60, which is how much crude this takes, is 360. So I've actually overbuilt this, but I'm envisioning a future at least in which I get 360 because I'll have the upgraded pipes. So let's take a look at what's happening on the output side. What you've got going on here are double lifts. So we're lifting up and over our polymer resin. So that's coming down this line with a bunch of mergers. It's going into, let's just say it's going into an A.W.E.S.O.M.E sink for now, although I am repurposing it for some other uses that I'll get into later. But then you also have your fuel. So the fuel's coming out of this line here. It's all joined up together, and it can be because look, you're going to get 6 refineries worth of fuel at 40 meters cubed. So you get 240, which is under the 300 that the pipe can hold. So that's just looping around here and running straight down the line into a bunch of fuel-powered generators. It's actually a really simple system to deal with. I would argue maybe even easier than coal, because all you really have to do, if you want to keep it simple, is just sink the byproduct. And then it's just oil to fuel, and you plug it into some generators and you're good to go. So the way that the math works here is that one fuel-powered generator will take 20 meters cubed of fuel, and one refinery will generate 40. So it's a 1 refinery to 2 generator ratio. So if I've got 6 refineries, I should have 12 fuel powered generators. Of course, since this is running slightly under, I only have 10. Now, these systems can get absolutely insane. I'm talking, I had 144 at one point. I've built systems that are in the many hundreds of fuel powered generators, but to get there, you actually need to unlock even more dense forms of fuel, which we haven't done yet. So the simplest way to do this is to just run one pipe down and throw generators on each side, and then just use one of these junctions and split them off. So it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times 2, 10 generators. And each of those generates 250 megawatts of power. So let's do the math real quick. We've got 300 oil coming out of our node. That is going into refineries at 60 per minute, so 5 refineries. Those 5 refineries will generate 40 fuel, right? So 200 divided by 20 is 10. And 10 times 250, which is the megawatts of power it produces, is 2,500. So basically, 300 oil at this stage of the game can produce 2,500 megawatts of power with the recipes. It's that simple for our fuel generation. It really is, and that gives us a really nice buffer to be able to build out some of these more complex factories. I'm going to show you one of those right now for motors. And here we are at the motor factory. We're producing 10 a minute here. Hold on, we got to get this gift. Santa's here, baby. Let's go. Boom!
Ho, ho, oh, whatever.
You know, Ada really likes to rain on our parade. So let me show you the bird's eye view of this factory that's producing 10 motors a minute. I'll get on top of my copper miner right here. So here's our copper station. We're producing some wire here. There is our final output. And then all of this over here is producing our rotors and our stators. So I will show it to you on our planner first. So take a look. We are producing 10 motors a minute, and I'll break down the math for you. But the first thing I'll mention is we are using 2 alternate recipes that simplify the production quite a bit. I want to first show you what this looks like, sort of raw, without any alternates. So really what you're doing is producing 10 motors a minute using 2 assemblers that are producing 5 a minute each. Next, to get to that point, you need 20 stators and rotors, because 1 assembler for motors producing 5 a minute requires 10 a minute each of rotors and stators. So of course, 2 assemblers producing 10 motors a minute would require 20 of each, which is pretty nice math. It's just really clean. Now to get there, weirdly, rotors require 5 assemblers to produce at 20 a minute because they only produce 4 a minute per assembler, but stators only need 4 assemblers because they produce at 5 a minute. But it doesn't really matter. Really, you just need to get to 20 a minute regardless of how many assemblers, even if you have to under or overclock. But here's where this can get a little intimidating for beginners. When you don't have alternates, you need to introduce 2 parts of this that are just a little bit annoying for a factory at this part of the game. It would be coal, because you need steel, because you need steel pipes for stators. Stators are steel pipes and wire. Not only need rods to make the rotors, but you need them to make the screws to make the rotors. So if we change to cast screws, which skips the rod process, and we also add iron pipes, which allows you to make steel pipes from iron, you can see how much simpler this production process gets. You don't have to use any coal at all, so there's no coal here. You still have to have the same amount of smelters, quite a few, but you're dramatically reducing the amount of constructors you need because you don't have to go through that double step process to get the screws. You're going straight to screws over here. And you also just get to make iron pipe. Now, the one caveat is you have to use a lot more iron to get to that pipe because it's 240 ingots just for 60 steel. Whereas if you did go through the steel chain, it would be a little bit more efficient as far as total resources, but we have no shortage of iron. So let me show you how this works in the game. So first we have our copper. This is taking out 80 a minute, and it's really simple. Whatever amount of wire you need, you just need half that amount of copper ore, because it's gonna go 80 ore to 80 ingots, because that smelts at 1:1. And then we're producing wire here out of 5 constructors, 4 of them running at 100%. So that'd be 120, because it's 30 a minute per. And then this one's running a little bit over at 133%, which is 40 per minute. So 120 plus 40 is 160. That's exactly how much we need for our recipe here. Popping on over to here, going into our assemblers for our stators. Now, the rest of the entire build is coming off of 2 different iron nodes. This one over here is producing all the iron that we need for our stators. So that is 240 iron a minute. Really, that's just getting thrown through a smelting array here. So 8 smelters, smelting at 30 minutes, that's 240 ingots coming out, right? Then you're really just taking that and throwing it into 3 steel pipe constructors. Now, the way I did this, because I need 60 per minute, is I just ran 3 of these, outputting 20 a minute. So I just slightly underclocked all of them just so it's nice and load balanced. It doesn't really matter. You could do this anyway as long as your total output was 60. And that's just going straight into my stator assemblers right there. It's actually quite simple. These stators are then flowing into the final 2 assemblers for the motors. So that takes care of this part of the production chain right here. That's all of that done. And the stators are now going into the motors. Now let's discuss our rotor side. So our entire rotor factory is being driven by this one node here, 225 per minute, which again is running into 8 smelters 8 smelters at full capacity would be 240. We're at 225. So I'm going to take 15 off. 240 minus, I'll just do the math for you. 240 minus 15 is 225. And then 225 divided by 30 is 7.5, which means that one of these smelters needs to run at 50%, which is exactly what we have going. Now, the rod side of this is actually really simple. I'm just running these ingots down the line here, manifold style system, so an overflow style system, and I'm running 7 of them. And the reason I'm running 7 is because I need 6.667 or 6 2/3 constructors. So it's easier to just build 7 and underclock this one than build 6, like right here, and throw a power shard in. I don't want to waste the power shard. So that's rods, and that's really simple. That just feeds straight into our system here. The slightly more complex part is when you get into the screws. Because we have the cast screw recipe, each of these constructors produces 50 screws per minute, which means that if we have 10 of them, because we do need 500 screws per minute to make 20 rotors per minute, we actually would run out of belt speed, because this can only transport, if we look at our belts, it's especially for when I built this, I only had Mark III belts, so I could only transport 270 resources a minute. And even if I got to Mark IV, I'd still be under, because this only transports 480 resources a minute. So if I ran all 10 of these constructors down one belt, I would actually only be able to input 480 a minute into these assemblers here for my rotors. So what I decided to do is split it into 2 rows of 5. So I have 5 constructors here, 5 constructors here. That would be producing 250 screws on this side and 250 screws on this side. So I could use Mark III belts, and that would be no problem. The question then is, how do you get it into the assemblers? Because you'd still overload if you combine these 2 belts, right? So at this chunk of line, I'm at 250. At this chunk, I'm at 150. And at this little chunk here, I would be at 50, which means all I have to do is just upgrade these 2 little slivers to Mark IV, and I'm good to go. So it's sort of like a refill line. 250, and then you refill another 250 once you've depleted enough to not overload your belts. Anyways, that goes into our rotor assemblers. Those assemblers spit out resources over here. 2 motor assemblers producing 5 a minute each. Very simple. And those go into our standard system here, which would be a industrial storage depot plus a dimensional depot with an additional sink just in case we overflow. And in fact, we are overflowing right now. So I'm pretty sure the next motor that comes out here, let's watch, should get synced. Yep, it does. So that's adding up to our points. We're actually producing 68,000 points per minute. Not too bad. 2 other factories that I've built for the mid-game that I wanted to show off to you. These are ones I lightly styled. You've got your Shard Multiplier. So when you get a power slug, you can of course just turn it into a power shard. But when you use Summer's loops, what you can do is turn it into 2 power shards or double your output. So let's take a look at the way that this little mini factory works. It's going to have a little door. It dumps stuff in right there, and it spits stuff out on this storage container over here. You can see I have some power shards that I just multiplied. But the way that it works is the storage container flows into a smart splitter. Now this smart splitter is facing this way. So you can tell the way a smart splitter faces because this yellow side is going to be considered the start of it. So the center output would be directly across from the yellow side. Whereas these ones, of course, the center output is this way, right? Facing to the south, not facing to the east like this. So sometimes it's confusing when you set up a smart splitter system because the first one tends to not be the same direction as the other 2 and people can get confused. So anyways, it's coming in here, it's taking a blue power slug and it's throwing it into this constructor here. So the blue power slugs get filtered off. Then you've got your yellows going into the left, right over here. And then you have your purples going into the left, right over here. Now these constructors are all mapped to taking either the purple, the yellow, or the blue over here. But the real key is that I've added this Sommer's loop right here, which will double the output. So 1 blue power slug becomes 2 shards, 1 yellow power slug becomes 4 shards, and then 1 purple slug becomes 10 shards. So you really start multiplying your shards like crazy. And I styled it up this way because it's really kind of cool to be able to just walk up, dump your slugs in, and then come over here and get your shards out and not really have to see much of what's going on. I just gave this a nice little glass roof. So if I really wanted to, I could check this out. Another one, I think this is really the more important factory for the mid game because you start to unlock a lot of points in the A.W.E.S.O.M.E shop, is the DNA multiplier. So this one requires just a little bit more. It's a two-stage process really. So the first stage happens on the ground floor where you put in all of your alien remains. This would be your, I'll show you, your hog remains. So this splitter takes hog remains out to the right, spitter remains out to the left. Anything else just passes on through. And then this splitter takes stinger remains out to the right and takes the hatcher remains out to the left. It creates alien protein from all of them using a Sommer's loop in each of the constructors. So no matter what comes in here, it's getting doubled into alien protein, right? So if I was to throw 10 of any of these resources in, doesn't matter what they are, I'm getting 20 alien protein out. Those are all being lifted upwards right here and then being merged down this line. It is pretty simple. That lift is coming in here as the input to this constructor. And then this constructor is taking alien protein and turning it into 2 DNA capsules, of course, with the use of the Sommer's loop, and syncing all of that immediately. So what you've done here is you basically said, hey, if I was to have, let's say 10 hog remains and toss it in here, that would become 20 alien protein. And that 20 alien protein would become 40 alien DNA capsules. So you've effectively quadrupled the amount of points that you can get. And it's crazy how fast that unlocks stuff for you in the A.W.E.S.O.M.E shop. Because, I mean, just look right now. I think I threw some stuff in a little bit ago, and I've got 33 tickets that I can use. So I'm kind of cranking away. Now I've unlocked quite a bit already, but I'll show you some of the stuff that I've gotten. I've cleared out the management tab here because all this stuff is just really helpful to be able to build things in a little bit more clean and aesthetic of a way. A lot of it's wall and floor attachments for all the various ways to transport materials. In organization, I cleared out all the signs and boxes. I want the ability to make the signs. Of course, I've already done that right there and right there. I think it just gives it kind of a nice little clean look. And then I've unlocked almost all the foundations. I'll get the quarter pipes right now. I unlocked almost all the walls. I'll get those right now. And then I got into I got into customizer because I wanted to get asphalt and grip metal. I wanted to use grip metal for my train foundations and asphalt for my road foundations. And I did have to pick up some of these patterns because as you progress through the game, you really want to be able to style stuff. So I grabbed some patterns, like this is great for roads, for example. And then in architecture, I've grabbed a lot of stuff. In fact, everything, because I want to start to be able to style some of my factories. So it's a really, really nice way to clear that stuff out. And honestly, I'm almost all the way done at this point. So let's add this guy to cart. So those are 4 mid-game factories: fuel, motors, and your shard and DNA multipliers that help you scale through the mid-game. What we've got going on now is I'm starting to design my rail network. We set it up in the last episode, just the very beginning stages of it, by building out a circuit board factory and laying our track. But now we need to get into the overall logistics of the train network, which is honestly kind of confusing. When I first started getting with trains in Satisfactory, I sat there for hours just trying to crack it. And sometimes I am still confused by some things. So don't be afraid if it confuses you. We'll get into it on the next episode. This is the Green Hand. If you guess who I am, I'm a YouTuber with 3.5 million subs. I will buy you a copy of Satisfactory. But until then, just enjoy the playthroughs, my friends. Thanks for being here. I'll see you on the next one. Peace out.